Good afternoon and welcome you to the international webinar on rethinking literacy, digital competency and media education in the age of digital platforms.
와 관련된 웨비나 세미나에 오신 여러분을 환영합니다. 저는 정현선이라고 합니다. 경인교육대학교의 교육연구원 원장을 맡고 있습니다. 오늘 제가 여러분들의 호스트의 역할을 하게 될 것이며 웨비나의 전반부의 사회자 역할을 하도록 하겠습니다.
For their tremendous support that they have provided as a co-host. We are very fortunate to have the professional team of Castopia, which is a top internet broadcasting service provider, and two wonderful interpreters who will assist us through simultaneous interpretation between Korean and English throughout the whole event. Before I hand the mic over to President Dr. Dae-hyuk and Dr. Chang for their welcome remarks, I have a few announcements to make to cover about the platform for this webinar. First, today's webinar will be accessible on YouTube through the channels of Gyeongin National University of Education and Incheon Community Media Center very shortly after this event. On our platform of this webinar, you can choose the language, either Korean or English, at the tabs above the screen. We've also added two attachments, the brochure and the proceeding, which are available through the tabs at the bottom of your screen. Next, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have a question for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the question tab at the bottom of your screen. Presenters will answer some of the questions when they respond during the roundtable discussion in the second part of the webinar. And last, we'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks such as Twitter, Facebook, or KakaoTalk. Now, relying on our great interpreters, I will be speaking in Korean from now on. 이제 오늘 웨비나를 공동으로 주최하는 경인교육대학교의 고대혁 총장님과 인천 시청자 미디어센터의 장영희 센터장님을 차례로 모셔 환영의 말씀을 듣도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 오늘의 웨비나를 준비하는 데 큰 도움을 주신 경인교육대학교의 고대혁 총장님을 소개하겠습니다. 고대혁 총장님은 동양 고전 철학과 도덕 교육 분야의 석학으로
President Dae-hyuk is such a well-known scholar in Eastern philosophy and moral education, and he has been in a chair for Eastern Classic Society and Eastern Ethics Education, and also the Korean teachers, Korean Elementary Moral Education Society. And at the same time, he is also board member of the Korean Council for University Education. So I'll pass over the microphone to him. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dae-hyuk, the president at the Gyeongin National University of Education. The Institute of Education and Research and Gyeongin National University of Education and the Incheon Community Media Center have the honor and pleasure to co-host this event to discuss literacy, digital competency, and media education. I'm also very pleased to be part of it. I also will take this opportunity to send my deep appreciations to Dr. Chang, the director of the Incheon Community Media Center, which is the co-host organization. The Gyeongin National University of Education was graded NA in the 2018 Teacher Education Evaluation by the Ministry of Education. In addition, in the 2018 Business Plan Evaluation for the National University Development Project and the 2017 Performance Evaluation for the National University Innovation Support Project, our university was rated the top. Also, we have been selected as a Global Teachers University for 8 years in a row, as well as a part of the Software Education Support Project as one of the most recognized teachers universities in Korea. Without COVID-19 situations, such highly recognized presenters, discussants, moderators, and audience interested in this subject could have been right here at this venue in person, which would have been so wonderful. What a pity it is that we meet only on webinar. However, on the other hand, thanks to webinar, thanks to this virtual technology, we can go beyond the time and space and engage a wider range of audience to listen to presentations and discussions on today's subject. With that, I expect to see even greater progresses in research and practices. Recently, Korea and the world have seen the spread of COVID-19 and subsequently social distancing policies being implemented. Children supposedly stay at home and adults also at home away from schools and offices, which lead them to spend way longer time at home than before. Remote learning, remote work, non-face-to-face ways to consume and distribute have been also increasing. Thereby our communications, work, learning, living being more dependent on digital technologies and media platforms. Digital spaces involve more communications among individuals, and our daily lives and learning are mediated by digital media and devices. In this context, the way to understand, take, produce, and share thoughts on information may need to be revisited. Literacy, digital competency, and media education have long been the subject to a variety of theories and research. But today, at the age of digital platform, our identities and social realities are formed by digital media, about which various issues should be critically reflected. And at this age, based on such reflections, we need to critically think and reason. Today, for presentations and discussions, we invited such erudite scholars leading the research on digital literacy and media education globally. Professor Lisa Kervin at University of Wollongong in Australia, Professor Byeong-Young at Hanyang University, Professor Shin Mezgusi at Tokyo University in Japan, Dr. Lucy Pangrazio at Deakin University in Australia, and Professor Chang at Gyeongin National University of Education. Thank you so much. Also, Dr. Yeonju Oh from the National Information Agency, Dr. Ami Kim from the Community Media Foundation, Professor Hyunjin Ok from Ewha Women's University, Dr. Unju Chang from the Ministry of Education, Professor Woo-hyun-yu from Incheon National University, Kwang-seok Lee from the Seoul National University of Science and Technology. My sincere thanks to you for making time out of your busy schedule. And all the participants, I hope you will find this event a meaningful and pleasant venue to meet and converse with colleagues on this journey to common academic interests and practices. Furthermore, again, our life and children's learning are massively influenced by digital media policies and practices. And research and academic work provide a ground for it. I hope today's conference will serve as a venue that we share the importance and seek a follow-up collaborations. Last but not least, Professor Hyeon-Seon Jeong, the Director of the Institute of Education and Research at Gyeongin National University of Education, and her team, Senior Member Min-young Choi at Incheon Community Media Center, and those concerned, technicians from Caspia, and 2 interpreters for communications. Thank you very much, and welcome you all. With that, let me conclude my welcome remarks. I wish you all health. Thank you.
Once again, President Ko Dae-hyuk, thank you very much for your active interest in today's webinar. Now, I would like to invite someone from co-host, Director Chang from Incheon Community Media Center. Director Chang worked as a reporter for 시사전형 and 시사인, and also served as a director of Audience Support Department, Director of Planning and Policy, the Viewers Media Foundation, and a public institution under the Korean Communication Commission, and served as a director of the Seoul Community Media Foundation, and took office as director of Incheon Community Media Center this March. And we have a pre-recorded video of her welcoming speech. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chang Young-hee, Director of Incheon Community Media Center. First of all, it is indeed a real pleasure and privilege that Gyeongin National University of Education and Incheon Community Media Center are co-hosting today's webinar. I would like to thank all the presenters and discussants for your contribution. I wish I could be there and to see face-to-face, listening to all your presentations in person, but because of the COVID-19 that I'm delivering my speech in a pre-recorded message. In the post-COVID-19 era, where in-tech interaction become increasingly common, that we should narrow the digital gap so that no one will be left out in getting the benefit they deserve. And digital media education is about the ability to properly access, critically understand, and analyze and use media, and that has been dealt with a lot in recent years as a topic that encompasses social communication, social participation, and the ability to cooperate. Today's international webinar is one of the attempts to understand the digital world. It will focus on analyzing the digital platforms that mediate human communication, also present the directions of media education to enhance digital competencies. In particular, digital literacy is regarded as an essential competency for us who have to live in an era with COVID-19. So I believe that it will be really befitting and meaningful international webinar. Once again, I would like to thank all the presenters and discussants for your time. And I would like to also thank the President Dae-hyuk, Dae-hyuk, and Professor Hyeon-Seon and all the staff of the Institute for Education and Research for preparing today's webinar. And I would also like to thank all the audience who are joining us online, and I hope you will enjoy today's webinar and hope you will be with us until the end. So Gyeongin National University of Education is co-hosting today's webinar together with the Incheon Community Media Center, which is really meaningful. And I would like to thank Director Chang Young-hee for providing full support for today's webinar. We tried to keep the time for today's webinar, but for smoothing the technical issues and for making you to enjoy today's webinar even better, that we will have a 10-minute break instead of 5-minute break. And as all the presenters, discussants take part through online, that there might be some issues, but we will really appreciate it if you are understanding of this and be patient. So now I would like to invite the first presenter, the Professor Lisa Corbin.
Lisa Corbin is a professor in language and literacy education at the University of Wollongong, Australia, and she's also Dean of the School of Education. She's currently involved in research projects funded by the Australian Research Council focused on adult and child interactions when using technology, young children, and writing and digital play, which is very interesting. Last January, I had a chance to visit the University of Wollongong where she teaches, and also I took a tour to around Early Start Discovery Space. And I was told that up to the first 10 years, kids, children, have such opportunities with Dutch educators who are conducting research and practices on education for those young age children, regardless of their family backgrounds or level of education of parents. And I was really impressed about the scale of the program. So I really wanted to ask her to be here with us to share her experiences. Today, she will be talking about digital literacy practices in the context of a home for children. And in this presentation, you will listen to the experiences of COVID-19 situations relevant digital literacy. And also, activity theory will be also mentioned in terms of affordance, interaction, of affordance of digital resources and interaction and literacy learning, and so on and so forth.
Thank you for that very warm welcome. It's so lovely to be here. And thank you for the invitation to speak at this very exciting webinar. It is wonderful to be able to visit you in Korea. How wonderful is technology? Behind me, you can see our Early Start building, which was mentioned in the introduction. We're very proud of this initiative. Early Start is focused on children aged birth to 10, and we work very closely with children, their families, and their educators as we try and bring more equitable futures to Australian children. The everyday use of digital technology certainly influences the literacy practices of young children and their families. We know that young children learn best through playful, hands-on, engaging, and interactive learning experiences that are meaningful and relevant to them. We know too that children's experiences are organised and shaped by society. But they don't just absorb those experiences. Children negotiate and transform them based on what they learn from personal, social, cultural, and school contexts. They learn through interactions and to read and write through interactions with literate children and adults. Young children need lots of opportunities to create meaning, to negotiate, and to take risks. They do this by playing with a range of materials, including digital devices. Children have a right to play. They have a right to relax and enjoy a range of resources and experiences, including digital ones. I look to digital literacy then as the ability to learn, locate, and understand information from digital devices. I argue, though, that digital literacy is more than knowing how to play an app or how to watch a YouTube clip. To be digitally literate means having the knowledge and the ability to use a range of technology tools for a variety of purposes. A digitally literate person can use technology strategically to find and evaluate information, to connect and to collaborate with others, to produce and share original content, and use the internet and technology tools to achieve many academic, professional, and personal goals. Literate knowledge, skills, and understandings emerge through interactions between elements of the environment, artifacts or tools. And when I talk about tools, I mean digital and non-digital tools, and people. As technologies become increasingly portable, affordable, and efficient, there is real need to examine how digital experiences contribute to literacy development. I use activity theory to help me describe the dialectical relations between elements of the environment, the artifacts or tools, and people. The basic premise of activity theory is that human activity is a complex interaction between an individual and their surroundings. Activity theory suggests that the activity is also influenced by other social and cultural factors within the context in which the activity is taking place. Specifically, the triangular model that you can see describes and connects the interacting elements of an activity system. It provides a conceptual framework for understanding the relationships between 1, the goals and intentions of an activity, referred to as the object. 2, the people engaged in the activity, referred to as the subject or subjects. 3, the tools mediating the activity. 4, the rules and regulations governing the activity, the rules. 5, the environment in which the activity is taking place, the community. And 6, the responsibilities and roles of the people involved, and this is referred to as the division of labour. And you can see the interplay of each of these elements in the diagram on the screen. In 2020, Australian COVID-19 experience saw children and their families using technologies in unprecedented ways. I'd like to begin by contextualising the Australian story by using an advertising campaign called It Starts With Yes. This campaign was developed by Special Group NZ and first appeared on Australian TVs during nationwide restrictions, which included lockdown. The developers say the ad tells a story about how, and I'm quoting here, the greatest things in life come from the commitment, positivity, and optimism to say yes.
So in the kitchen there can be a massive blue
In this 1-minute video, we see a story unfold. We see children at play in their homes. We see children seamlessly move between digital technologies, phones and tablets, and other resources in their homes, including toy cars and trucks. We see children using technology to communicate with each other, to share plans, and document experiences. We see the complexity of home environments and play and technology coexisting in kitchens, living rooms, stairwells, inside and outside, alongside working parents, and even pet animals. This is certainly what my home was like.
So in the kitchen there can be
We can think about the application of activity theory to help us understand the ways that digital technology are used by children. If we look to the advertisement text we have just examined, and look more deeply at the COVID-19 situation, children are certainly using technology in unprecedented ways in this scenario. Let's delve further into the scenario we have just seen of children at home, parents working from home, and potential uses of technology. Let's start with the object. The object of the digital activity may be to entertain. It could be watching a movie, watching some television, YouTube clips, playing games. It could be to communicate with others through software like what we're using now, FaceTime or Skype. To produce artifacts, they might be writing a story, organising photos, creating video. In the video we just saw, the object of the experience was for these children to work together to enact a plan that involved conversation, experimentation, sharing, testing, collaboration, amongst many other things. Let's look to the subject. Now we know that the subject may include the child, siblings, parents, other adults, including extended family, and perhaps even educators. In the video, we saw a group of children come together and work alongside siblings, parents, pets, and ultimately work together as neighbours. Let's look to the tools. The tools that mediate the digital activity include the device and specific affordances of that technology, but also the software applications that are used during the interaction. In this video scenario, we saw a complex mix of digital technologies and non-digital technologies. Let's think about the rules. The rules and regulations are defined by individuals and groups that govern the performance of the activity. These rules may come from societal expectations, for example, knowledge of screen time regulations. They may come from what it is that the technology enables and the rules for use, for example, age restrictions on certain applications. They may also come from within the system, for example, household expectations for the management of digital technologies. These children in this video were able to operate in a context where they were able to get the job done. They had the time, the space, and the resources to be able to help them enact the idea. Let's look to the community. The community refers to the household environment where the digital experience occurs. In this case, it was 7 household environments, all within the one apartment block. The home community is informed by parents through their attitudes and their belief systems, but also their time and experience with technology. We can assume that the parents in this video were supportive of the tasks the children were working on. We saw the play activities occur within the context of other family life, viewing the phone while having a haircut, building tracks alongside a parent working from home on a laptop. So technology use may support the daily activities of the family and what is available for use. Remembering, of course, that families had more time at home altogether due to the period of COVID-19 lockdown. Finally, let's look to the division of labour. The division of labour enables us to consider the role of each person in the scenario. In particular, we consider what each of the subjects are doing and what their specific interaction features are or may be. At the University of Wollongong, I'm fortunate to currently lead a project funded by the Australian Research Council focused on quality in adult-child interactions during digital experiences. And I acknowledge my colleagues Irina Veronikina, Stephen Howard, and our very talented doctoral student Kate Lewis. And of course, the support of friends and colleagues Susan Danby and Iram Siraj. This project aims to address the digital phenomenon with young children by investigating possibilities for adult-child interactions, as we work to really understand what is happening in home and educational settings to enable us to provide guidance for families and educators. We're also working to find ways to measure quality in interactions. Throughout the course of this research, we are working with educators, children, and their families. We are watching, talking, and listening to the challenges they face, the opportunities that exist, and trying to find solutions. During 2020 and the period of lockdown and physical distancing, children and their families had more time in their homes and often increased access to and time with digital technologies. There has been a phenomenal increase in digital experiences available to families. In Australia, these have included, but are certainly not limited to, the national public television station ABC providing school-type lessons, virtual field trips, author read-alouds, physical education lessons accessed through YouTube, and even recorded performances of theatre, dance, and music able to be downloaded. Experiences have come from local, state, national, and international contexts. For many of our children, the digital has certainly expanded their network and access to resources. Children and their families have accessed these to varying degrees. It has been fascinating to examine scenarios of children in their homes as they operated alongside their parents, who were also often working from home during the periods of isolation. We've looked at these periods to examine some of the ways that digital technologies were used. Here I share some images captured in one family, sharing photos and videos of activities at home, like playing with the dog, with friends and family. Video conferencing with friends and family. Networking devices and TV screens to share experiences. Creating read-alouds to share with others. I'm going to take one of these examples and use activity theory to explicate what is happening. Let's look to the child creating a read-aloud. This child used the book Knuffle Bunny, written by Mo Williams. The child created a video read-aloud that lasted about 3 minutes and 10 seconds. The child read and the parent video recorded the reading. The family are subscribed to a private Facebook group called Kids Reading to Kids, a place where there is over 2,700 members. Children are video recorded as they read, presumably by parents or siblings. The video is uploaded to the site and shared. Members to the Facebook page are encouraged to view clips, presumably with children in their households, and leave a comment or a reaction to the reading. And we saw lots of these sorts of virtual networks created during the period of COVID lockdown, as people were creating and maintaining communities with those that they knew and establishing new connections. So what does activity theory tell us about this read aloud experience? Let's first look at the object. So the object of this digital activity may be to entertain, to create an addition to an archive for others to enjoy. It could also be to practice their reading, while also having the opportunity to communicate with others through comments and reactions, and we saw some of those on the previous slide. There is no doubt this was a literacy experience with quite a clear purpose. Let's look to the subject. Now, the subjects include those within the home, so the child, the siblings and parents, and also other adults and children connected through the virtual network. The tools that mediate the digital activity include the picture book, the device, and the specific affordances of the technology to capture video and sound, but also the design of the Facebook page that guides the interaction. Let's think about the rules. So the rules and regulations are defined in the home through the negotiation of a text to share and the recording of this. But rules are also enforced by those individuals within the virtual community that operate in agreed ways. For example, motivating children to read, acknowledging the author and illustrator, and being kind to the readers, all rules that were published on that site. These rules provide a supportive environment and audience for children to share their reading abilities. So who's the community? The community is both the household environment where the recording of the reading occurs, but also the Facebook virtual community where the reading is shared and commented upon. So then if we think about the division of labour, this enables us to consider the role of each person in the scenario, the role of the child, the role of the parents, the role of the mediator of the Facebook site, and the roles of members to the site. If we think back to the images shared of that family, we could analyse each of those instances in the same way. And I would love to, if only I had the time. This afternoon, I have used activity theory to help us understand the complexity of digital experiences as we look to the relationships between and among the home context, the affordances of the digital resources, and the potential for interaction and literacy learning opportunities. Activity theory provides a theoretical perspective to contextualize the different environments children participate in, the actual environments and the virtual environments, to help us understand the interactions that occur between subjects and the tool and artifact, and how this supports children's digital literacy practices. So when we look at the potential for technology to mediate interactions, connecting with others, communicating, body language, image, written text, emojis, the collaborative activity, including creating and sharing tools, these all enable a focus on digital literacy and look to what the affordances of digital technologies may be for children, their families, and educators. And I believe the more we can understand the ways in which digital technology is used by children and how this is shaped by the social context, the better we will understand the relationships between the home context, the affordances of digital resources, their potential for interaction, and digital literacy learning opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you for insightful presentation, Lisa. 리사 커빈 교수님께서는 어린이들의 디지털 기술 활용 사례를
Professor Kervin shared her experiment on her presentation based on the context of a play in relation to literacy and also the digital literacy at home. And I was really impressed about the slogan, it starts with yes. there were people who, in particular in Korea, who thought that the digital devices and technologies may negatively affect the study of children. But that kind of ideas should be, the kind of perspective should be changed. Now I would like to invite Mr. Byeong-Young. He will be talking about critical literacy education with multiple online sources, building theory from practice. Byeong-Young is Associate Professor of Literacy at Hanyang University. Before he arrived at Hanyang University, Dr. Cho worked as Associate Professor of Language, Literacy, and Culture at the University of Pittsburgh School of Education and Learning Research and Development Center. From this semester, he started teaching at Hanyang University. In this, and he serves on the Visioning and Development panel for the 2025 NAEP Reading Framework Update project commissioned by the National Assessment Governing Board in the United States. He actually has been, his work has been focused on the complex multi-source textual environments. Professor Cho will touch upon the importance of new literacy, new digital literacy. Today, his presentation will be talking about the digital space, which requires us to read a variety of materials in different ways, rather than deeply look into one or a few texts. Can you hear me well? I believe so. I hope so. Well, Professor Chang made really kind introduction. Professor Kervin mentioned digital activity and activity theory by Incheon, which was very interesting. I thought in my presentation, maybe also relevant to Professor Kervin's presentation, I would say. Today, I would talk about online text, which cannot be defined as just one or single text. So what kind of critical approaches we can take in online text? And I hope that my presentation will give you an opportunity to think further, and also what do we know about how people read and how people don't read. And when we read and learn and do literacy activities, what is the role of critical literacy? And if we understand all, then what could we change for our schools and classroom practices? I didn't really plan to give you the answers of these questions. I'm not saying that I know the answers of these questions, but let me share with you some cases that I worked on in the United States, because I think that these cases will be a sort of a stimulus for you to think about the questions again. When we think about reading text, well, the reading is actually beyond reading letters alone. And when we read a text, it doesn't mean that you are given a text. Rather, it goes beyond the decoding and comprehension skills. Decoding and comprehension skills themselves are not digital literacy activity. And today, the age requires active use of personal and cultural resources in reading, and also the age demands reflection and self-regulation. And then how people don't read. motivational and emotional and social processes and journeys are involved in reading, not just the cognitive functions, but also other functions are needed. When we are talking about the differences of the ability for literacy, we have to think about the source of cognitive ability rather than cognitive ability itself. Activity, context, and goals and objects are also very important, and when those all three are well situated, then you can do activity the best. And the community of discourse is also important. The most up-to-date theory says that the community is also very important for communications and literacy. How about literacy education today in classroom? What kind of educations we have been providing to our students? We have to go beyond the test-like questions in our classrooms. Students should have an ability to produce questions going beyond the textbooks, not just rote or just getting some skills, but also some opportunities for them to actively read some texts are all needed. And at the same time, an individual or cultural connections are all needed in our curriculum and also classrooms. So when I was at the University of Pittsburgh, we asked such questions in relation to context. And we got a fund by a Spencer Foundation and did some experiment conducted a sort of case study. The subject of the research was middle school in an urban setting. And the students are 100% Black, African Americans. And according to test score, the students were less performed. So generally, they have been considered students who have some difficulties in learning. So based on the questions that I shared with you in this presentation, we have been exploring a variety of documents, and multi-source documents were provided to the students, and the authentic questions and authentic texts were all chosen for students so that they can connect their life with those questions. And rather than we give the text to them, we also gave them choices of text so that they can choose the text that they want. And also we created a sort of classroom discourse setting. On the right-hand side, you see the online repository. A variety of materials were available in relation to subjects. And me and my research team made this page, and the students can click one subject or a book of their choice out of this. Then what did the student do in the critical literacy program? Well, that was a district called Lower Hill District. So let me share with you the background of the district. I actually prepared some photographs for your understanding. If you understand the history of this district, then my talk will be more relevant to you, and you will understand my talk better. Well, so when the urban redevelopment takes place, those native local people are likely to be expelled from the district, and new people coming to the community. So the same happened to the United States in this the Hills district. And students learned about what happened to Lower Hill, where I live, my parents have been living. They threw the questions. And this is, I also briefly touch upon the background of the history. I mean, the background. You see, this is Pittsburgh. This is the front side. But on the back side, you will see this huge parking lot. It's contrast, the front. And you see this Lower Hill district before demolition. The immigrants lived there, and they were all poor. And also racial discrimination were really severe, but they themselves had their own culture at that time. Well, Hill District has been very well known for this in the United States. So the district was really cultural. And also black baseball team was created in this district, although that time the baseball was not really popular in the US. But due to racial discrimination, of course, the residency area were not really good enough to live. But you see, at the center is Lower Hill on the photo, and in this area, houses do not have the individual bathrooms, restrooms, so they have to use the common bathroom. So the developers chose that community and constructed this stadium. And this started being used for hockey arena. And with that, the community was demolished. The government actually made a promise to those native local people for houses and jobs, but the government didn't really keep the word, so people resented. And April 4th in 1968, Martin Luther King was killed, and with that as trigger, two waves of resistance took place in the Lower Hill district. One was really peaceful, and the other was very violent. So the army actually came into the district, and 2,000 people were injured, which was really a big case. Since then, this district has been considered a very dark city area. So the community was just all gone. And also the stadium, which looked like a space, was also destructed recently. So this kind of content was touched upon after being designed together between students and teachers in classroom. And in the middle of the program, we paired two students and asked them to pick some texts of their choice. And we asked them to make a historical claim. based on the text, and we gave them the YouTube, the camera for YouTube creation. And we also have them keep talking to each other with their peers. So let me share with you a case in point, which was quite brief. Dae-hyuk and Incheon. How many minutes do I have left? Well, Dae-hyuk was quite a model, and I mean, he is quite good at school. I mean, but Hyeon was not as good as Dae-hyuk in academic activities. And this is the photo that they found when they visited History Museum. And the Federal Army actually set a camp and riot, racial discrimination. The articles that they found were relevant to such subjects, and we analyzed the process of analysis. In 1950s and 60s, there were such beautiful stories in the district. That's what they understood from the text. But later, they also found the army and from the second text, but from the third text, the students had a chance to deeply think over poverty, discrimination, and so on and so forth. And they made this question: what caused the riot? And what killed the Hill District? And they turned back to the second text. So let me read this.
There's actually camps there too. You can see there's a tent right there. So that means there was a staking out. Exactly, those look like military trucks where they carry the soldiers. Yeah, they could hop out of the truck and stop all the violent protests. Then they got the tanks. 자, 여기 이 부분에 학생들이 굉장히 주의를 기울이게 됩니다. 왜 탱크지 갑자기? 시민들 진압하는데 탱크까지 필요해?
And here the people, I mean, students became really cautious.
And the launch is huge groups, and if that hits a human, there's no way that they're leaving it out. It's probably going out to go straight through you. Yeah, the National Guard, they were in the Peace Stadium. They'll be charged with murder in the first degree, but they're supposed to enforce the law. But did anybody die? 근데 근거를 요구하는 겁니다. 이렇게 그래서 연방정부가 와서 탱크 가져왔는데 사람이 죽었어? No, I said it would happen. So if you go back to it, 그래서 카메라를 다시 이렇게 비추게 하죠. 그러면서 얘기를 하다가 타리어라는 학생이 키온이라는 그 부진한 학생이 아주 비판적으로 노티싱, 잡아낸 것에 대해서 뭔가 중에 정리를 해주는 이런 것을 합니다. We're going to add more, like what happened to the hill. We can put overreaction, 굉장히 중요한 단어인데요. It might have caused the destruction.
And then they made very critical comments on this. For example, like at the last paragraph, it says overreaction. It is very, very critical terminology. I mean, critical word here.
So 이 과정을 보면 이 텍스트를 깊이 읽음에 따라서 그 텍스트가 표상하는 굉장히 상반된 어떤 정보들을 캐치해내고 감정들을 캐치해내고
when they go back to the second text, they started being more critical and picked up very critical information. And with this activity, their understanding of the text and the history
여러분이 위키피디아에서 찾을 수 있는 그런 단순적인 정보가 아니라
became a lot progressive. I mean, like this kind of understanding is basically a dialectical. So we learned 3 lessons. One is classroom talk, intertextual understanding. How can we help our students to create intertextual understanding? Second, when they pick up the texts and the authentic subject, how can we help them to make them relevant to themselves and connected to them, and help them critically engaged in the activities and last but not least is you would have been you have noticed, well, they were very open. Our students were very open to the conclusion, and their discussion was very reasonable. Like they asked for the evidence of argument, something like that. So how can we help epistemic responsibility of our students? That was the third one. Okay. As Professor Corbin said, a variety of activities can help students learn, and students can work together and accept critical ideas from others. Well, tens of thousands of studies are coming out about COVID-19, but we're not really known about COVID-19. So we are living in such challenging time, and during this COVID-19 situations, the people feel really uncomfortable connected to each other. So we know how we can help our students, but it's a little hard for us to apply such approaches to the reality in the COVID-19 situations. It seems like I'm a little late behind the schedule. Sorry.
So Professor Chang, how to critically interpret the internet resources, and he's been doing the research on that. So the critical thinking and how we can even enhance such critical thinking, and he contextualized with a real case in Pittsburgh. And I can also think that this is somewhat related with Lisa Kervin's research and the next presenter's research. So in the real lives of the students and based on the actual facts and the lives, that they can understand the historical facts and they can develop their own story. So throughout this process, that Lisa Kervin also talked about the tools, and he focused on the activity that is done by with the use of the tools. And Professor Cho also developed something that the students can see online, and that will serve as the basis for reasoning, and they can have the shift in their perspective. So that will be the process of developing their critical thinking. So these two presentations, I think, is somewhat similar in this aspect. So that was a really excellent presentation. And you also made me realize that how enjoyable that literacy experience is. And now I would like to invite the Professor Mitsukoshi Shin from the University of Tokyo. And the media, his presentation will be on the media landscape without Apple. Let me briefly introduce the Professor Shin. And he's a professor of media studies at the Interfaculty Initiative of the Information Studies at the University of Tokyo. He has been working on critical and practical media studies to try to familiarize and recombine the relationship between media and people with the design-oriented mind. And Professor is also the editor of a bilingual independent little magazine, and he has considerable readership in Korea as well. And Professor Shin told me that he's using media literacy as a methodology for media research and practice. I think this statement shows that authenticity of research and practice that the professor is newly opening in the changing digital media environment. And Professor Shin is also deeply interested in the internet construction, and his presentation will be on the media landscape without Apple. If Apple went bankrupt in 2007, that we will not have the same media landscape now, then how would we live in the media landscape without Apple? So it would be great if you imagine what kind of scenario you will come up with if you were part of that group. So now I will pass over the microphone to Professor Shin.
passing mic over to you.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And hello, everyone. My name is Shun Mizukoshi of the University of Tokyo. Thank you very much for everyone who have been preparing for this wonderful webinar seminar. And I'm very much excited by two previous presentators' presentation, and I was very much absorbed in thinking about them. But I have to do my own one. And I think I am very excited because I'm going to examine the new literacy for media platform or infrastructure via a new media infrastructure, Zoom webinar. And probably most of the people in Japan didn't know the name Zoom, the different brand name or something like that. But now there are several choices, Zoom or Google Classroom or others. And so the interface design or the architecture of this kind of the system itself framed our conversation very much. And that kind of thing is a topic of my issue today. And before going into the presentation, I would like to show you some kind of preconditions. One is that my background is not pedagogy or educational studies, but media theory or media studies. Because my ones are very practical and connected to the neighborhood or the local people. Eventually, it's a kind of the media literacy or media practice activities. So I was situated in Japan, like the midst between the media theory of studies and the media education. That's one thing. And the other thing is that the research project and workshops I will discuss today is mainly for the adult or adult education and educational program for university students, ICT industries people, and cooperative, COPE, 협동 조합, it's right? COPE members. And some of them may apply for the school children, but mainly focusing on adult people. And from the standpoint of media studies, today I will discuss about the new dimension of the literacy for media platform, infrastructure, and ecosystems. And the first part of my presentation is mainly for the theoretical examination, or tracing the theoretical trend in media studies. And the latter part is focusing on the my own research project. And I will pick up mainly the workshop titled Media Landscape Without Apple, which Hyeon-Seon Jeong kindly introduced briefly now. And during the process, I will show you about 5 minutes video. I know the 20 minutes presentation and 5 minutes video is very dangerous, but I will try. And then I will go back to the theoretical discussion again at the last part. Well, in this about 10 years or so, the media studies trend has been changing. These 6 books, the right side is English and right side is Japanese and the left side is in English ones, but most of them are the symbolic eminent achievements. For example, left side, the bottom, the David Morey, who is very famous for his theory, active audience in 90s or in 80s. And that is a very important key theory for the cultural studies, British cultural studies. But nowadays, he is moving more to the mobility matters. And he has a very interesting discussion about the container books, material container books, worldwide moving, in what way they are connected to the culture, politics, and economy, or so on. And this is very interesting book. And right side top one, Mitsuoka and Okubo's screen studies. And this was done by a young researcher in Japan, and some of them are Korean. And they try to conquer the limitation of the television studies, film studies, or mobile phone studies. they try to, some of them as a screen, small screen to the big screen, and try to make a new dimension on the screen studies. Anyhow, what I want to tell you is that in these days, the media studies, the body, space, or materiality, or infrastructure, this kind of thing is a very important thing. And I believe that that is not only the new matters, but also a very traditional or classic intellectual streams. So let me very roughly, categorize the media studies into three. First is media studies for text analysis, and that is very much, developed by the British cultural studies in 80s and 90s. And this kind of thing is very much tied or combined with media literacy for critical reading. And the second point is that media studies for expression and production. So doing and understanding. Critical understanding needs a kind of the creative production. This was, for example, David Buckingham trumpeted this kind of things. And originally, John Dewey or Paulo Freire do this kind of thing. And I believe that Professor Cho's activities very much connected to this one and also for the text analysis. And what I am now focusing on the third one, media studies for designing and infrastructure. And here are also Bruno Latour, Harold Innis, Kittler, or John Peters, and the recent David Morris achievement. These kind of things are very much focusing on this. And okay, so let me organize a discussion that media literacy has developed under the strong influence of the theory of in media studies. But present media literacy has been mainly cultivated by critical media theories that have primarily focusing on text, representation, messages, and contents. And their highlights was in 1990s. I think it's still very important, but still, with the ecological transition of the digital technology in the 21st century, media literacy should examine not only the critical awareness of media text, but more on the media platform, the infrastructure, this kind of material matter, and the media ecosystem. And that kind of thing is very hard to see. This is my drawing. And if we try to, make this kind of the three layers, the media contents, ecosystem, and media infrastructure, and critical text analysis, it's a very important main body of the media literacy. And this is the active expression and the production matters. And these two are the very important things. And this MELL project, MELL project, Media Expression, Learning and Literacy project, which I conducted in 2000 for about 10 years. And the point of the MELL project is that they try to combine these two matters, active expression and critical analysis. This kind of the reciprocal activity must be very important. So I am very much impressed by the Professor Cho's activities. But so I still believe that this is very important and the main stage of the media literacy. But still, we have to think this green area, which is unseen and very important. So from 2018, I launched a new project called the New Literacy for Media Infrastructures. And back to this slides, the platform and infrastructure ecosystem. There are many discussions about how to organize this kind of thing. But I believe that the infrastructures, for example, the internet or the airwave or so on, platform, the Twitter, Facebook, this kind of the commercial activities. So there are some layers, and these relationship of the layer transit by timeline. So I want to discuss this matter theoretically, but I don't have enough time, so I will go forward. Yes, we've launched the project, and in this project, I collaborate with the Twitter Japan people or Yahoo Japan people. You know, in Japan, still Yahoo has a very big power. And usually the Yahoo or Google or the Twitter is the kind of the enemy of the, you know, media literacy or so. But I believe that the people are working in this kind of the company, and many people are trying to, you know, revise their activities. So I want to make a kind of connection with them, and also with the cooperative people. And for a while, I've been, you know, we are doing we are focusing on the theoretical examination and also the practical designing activity of the workshops for the general people. And there are 3 types of the workshops, and from the very short hours 1 to the longer one. And today I will show you briefly type 1 and type 2, and then the type 3. The type 1, it's very simple. Facilitator asks participants to make a top 5 ranking of 10 scenery pictures collectively. And facilitators collect all the data from them. And facilitator change some coefficients of the ranking algorithm that make a different ranking. And participants can reflect on the existence of an algorithm under it and find the change of the coefficient change the ranking. So it's very simple matter, but what search engine like Google do is the same. So when you put the name Shin Mizukoshi on the Google, there is a kind of some, you know, blaming or something like that for me. That's not like an encyclopedia, but that's a ranking, you know. So try to this kind of very simple work is a very, you know, easy entrance kind of activities. And this is also another matter, but probably there is something. Yeah, I have to skip this one. Okay, that type 2, I will skip. And I will go into the type 3 video. It will take about 5 minutes, so sorry.
2007年にもし iPhone が出なくて会社が潰れてたとすると、2019年の今我々のメディア環境はどうなってるんだろうと、みんなで話し合ってもらって、シナリオを作ってほしいんです。このワークショップはですね、今あるこの当たり前のソーシャルメディア、あるいは当たり前のスマートフォンで、この当たり前さをひっくり返す、違う目で見る、そういう想像力を養おうって、そういうことを考えてこしらえたワークショップです。
今日はですね、こういう視点で歴史を見ていくとこういうことが見えてくるみたいなのを、ちょっと発展史、社会史、美術史っていうちょっと3つの、ベクトルで、ちょっと順に説明してみようかなという。
スマートフォン私たち普段使ってるけど、災害のことだけ考えるとあまり有効活用されてる例っていうのはほとんどない。
このスマホが出てからこの10年最適化っていう名のもとに、アップルとグーグルが非常にそこの方向性を誘導してきた。
2007年に出てきた時っていうのは使い始めくらいですね。スマホになってできたことみたいな思いついたものをいやどんどん入れていきましょう。今何にスマホを使ってるかをバーって洗い出してるっていう感じ。
そんなに多くないかも。スマホでしかできない。
自分にとって iPhone は何かみたいな
体の一部ですよね。
そういうのでもいいと思う。いや、そういうのでもいいと思う。皮膚に貼るタイプとか遺伝子開発的な方に行っていても面白かったかもしれない。
ずっと皆さん話してるんですよ。お弁当食べてる時もなんかコーヒー飲んでる時もずっと話してる。 そういうことができたっていうことで言うと、メディア論的にはかなり僕は成功したんじゃないかなと思う。
アカウントって何？わかんない。
アカウントって今でもなんかハードに依存してるのかな。
でも別に iPhone 持ってなくたって Apple ID 作れる。
ハードは複数共有化されているけど、アカウントは
一緒で
アカウントのことをめちゃめちゃ信用できればハードを持ち歩く必要は本当はないはずなのかな。
分かった。そもそもハードっていうものしかなかったからこの概念がある。
ちょっとしたつぶやきってどうみたいな。
音声のつぶやき。
そう。
つぶやいたことが本当に共有されるみたいな。でも音声上の SNS ができてるかもしれないですね。
小型地震が発生して各地域にある大きな画面でその地域の人たちがそこに集まってやり取りの記録が溜まっていってて、
掲示板
そう
スイカがどんどんパワーアップしていってその手先とかでもう自分のパソコンについてスイカを置けばプッと自分のデータとして立ち上がってパソコンが全部僕らはスイカがもっと覇権を握っているのではないかっていうところで巨大なインフラ全体を電車とセットにしながら海外にも輸出していく。
ちょっとその作業に移れるようなちょっと
最近アイコンないから
生活文化班のプレゼンでは
成果の可能性に行政公共事業人類の行動を助けるためには人類が出世するスマートなエージェンシーが必要とされました。
スマートフォンやあるいはその他デジタルプラットフォームが当たり前になっている中でそのプラットフォームを引き剥がしてみる。さらに言うとイマジネーションという意味での想像するだけじゃなくて、本当に今あるのとは違うプラットフォームをあるいはメディアを、作っていくっていうか本当にクリエーションという意味での想像をしていくっていうようなことにこういうことがつながるとなんか文系とか理系とかそう産業界とか大学とかを超えたある形になっていくのかなと、そのことを期待してやみませんっていう感じですかね。
スマートフォンがあることでもうそういう便利な世の中になっていくっていうのはあくまでよく考えてみると空論です。逆に災害とかが起きた時は逆に全然使えないものになってしまう。スマホに対していろいろな視点を持ってたという
そのフィロソフィーというか文化みたいなところも含めて根源的なことを問い直すというか、疑って、一応自分でシミュレーションしてみるみたいなところの問いにはなったかなと思ってはいます。
Okay, I will sum up with a slide. Well, I have to skip in the detail of this workshop's achievement, but it's a very fruitful opportunity for the participants to reflect on their media platform or their media infrastructure, which they don't aware before the workshop. And we've produced about 5-6 workshops in this project and collaborating with the IT industry and COPE people. And COPE in Japan, the people of the COPE is 65 million. It's about half of the Japanese population. I doubt this number, but recently all COPEs make a kind of the alliance in this kind of things. And adult education are usually, for the general people. Who is the general people, general citizen? In this time, I'm focusing on for example, forestry people, agriculture people, or fishery people to provide them the workshops and to discuss with them about the critical understanding of media platform and infrastructure from now on. And this kind of the activity is very much connected to recent emerging social movement like platform cooperativism, which I am very much connected. And also, this is the last slide, but I believe that the media infrastructure level, I think there are some, resemble thing like in the media contents level, we need a critical reading activity and active production. The same kind of things we need on the platform and the infrastructure level. I tentatively put the name metaphorical understanding and DIY-minded practices. And from the next year, I am trying to connect this kind of the achievement to the robot and AI media literacy. Thank you very much.
네, 미스코시신 교수님 상상력 넘치는 문제의식과
Professor Shin, that the creative, the challenge that you put into the workshop, that was quite interesting. I met Professor Shin in 2003, and through the conference that we met for a few occasions, and 2 years ago we met again at another conference. And what you have shown, the photos that were quite interesting. You're very good at drawing, and you're always preparing the slide with your drawings. And in 2003, when we met, that you were doing the mail project and the media expression and production, that you were connecting these and you were doing the research on this. And now, the green part, the media ecology and going beyond media ecology, the media infrastructure is what you're focusing at the moment. So you're doing the research on the media infrastructure level now. So when you begin your presentation, you said you're not an expert in education, and you're doing a lot of activities mainly for adults. And in this era of digital platforms, we need media literacy research and education for adults as well. And when we're dealing with the text and meaning, going beyond the text and meaning, so who recommends such context and text? And we need to be able to critically think and select those texts. So adults also need such kind of education. So what you have said in your presentation, I think that has much implications for us as well. And I'm trying to find some keywords, and that was the shift in perspective, and the practice is what is penetrating all the 3 presentations made so far. So hopefully that we can discuss more on these keywords. So we have heard the 3 different presentations. Now it's time for us to have a short break. So now we will have a 10-minute break. So at Korea time, it's 3 p.m. and Sydney time, it's 4 p.m. So in 10 minutes, we will resume. Thank you.
안녕하세요, 여러분. 모두 휴식 시간을 잘 보내셨나요?
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the break. We'll resume the session. Now I would like to invite
온라인 프라이버시 보호 중심의 청소년 미디어 교육을 넘어서기 비판적 데이터 교육을 위한 데이터 리터러시 프로젝트입니다. 루시 판그라지오 박사님은 호주 디킨 대학교 알프레드 디킨 박사후 과정 연구원으로 계십니다. 비판적 리터러시 그리고 디지털 텍스트의 변화하는 특성에 초점을 둔 연구를 진행하고 계십니다. 저는 지난 1월에 호주에 가서 박사님을
Last January, I had a chance to meet with Dr. Pangrazion, and also we had a chance to discuss the research interest regarding data securities and privacy issues. We have learned about very abstract instructions and manuals in Korea in terms of education, but Dr. Pangrazion actually has been using chatting applications for education. she developed it, and she actually she learned and she explored how users generate data and how the data is accumulated, and when and how the data can be made use of by against the intention of users, and when the users can be in risk, something like that. Now we would like to invite Dr. Penguazi.
Thanks, Hyeon-Seon. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here today to partake in this wonderful conference. And it seems like such a great time to actually be discussing some of these issues, given just how the coronavirus has revealed to us some of the issues and problems we have in our digital systems and our understandings of them. So thanks to the translators and Hyeon-Seon and the organisation team, and also Gyeongin University as well. So my talk today is really a critical reflection on 3 research projects that I've conducted over the last 3 years. And I've worked with collaborators, particularly Neil Selwyn at Monash University. Now, while I cover some of the findings from our projects, the point of my presentation today is really to think about what worked when we were doing these education programs and what didn't work, in order to progress our understanding about how to support young people's privacy online. And indeed, there are an enormous array of implications when children's privacy is breached. So we have profiling issues, tracking, predictive analytics, to name a few, and these can have a range of long-term and short-term effects. So just as a bit of background, public concerns are acute when it comes to the issue of datification. And datification is essentially the conversion of many types or aspects of our social interactions into data that can be commodified and then used in the digital economy. So the proliferation of digital devices, platforms, and AI, combined with surveillance cameras in urban environments, facial recognition technologies in schools, airports, and the plethora of digital systems used throughout daily life mean there are literally masses of data collected about individuals, with many of us having little understanding about how our data is collected, stored, and processed. So when we consider the way that data can be used to shape individuals' behaviours, in many respects, datification presents one of the kind of big challenges of our time, as it does pose a threat to the constitution of the liberal democratic subject. However, when it comes to young people in particular, many of these issues are intensified, as the implications can have a profound impact on their social and educational futures. Like adults, young people have no way of knowing these identities that are created for them. So what we might call data doubles or data shadows. It is increasingly falling to educators to support young people to develop these kinds of understandings. So the Children's Commissioner for England recently said that it's up to schools to teach young people about how to manage their data and digital privacy. And we've had similar calls in Australia. So my talk today then is how schools might be able to support the development of children's data privacy. And when it comes to digital literacies, I really believe in developing a comprehensive education of the digital infrastructure in a way that was similar to what Professor Shin was referring to before, is that I think that is essential for a critical understanding of the digital context. Now, the approach that we took aligns with what Emajulu and McGregor call a radical digital citizenship, which seeks to problematize dominant ideas about technologies and rethink citizens' relationship with technology. So we also believe that classroom-based criticality is certainly best approached through a personal lens. So what might a critical curriculum based around personal data and privacy look like? And we tried to break it down into 6 main steps and then develop the program around this. So we start with the idea that young people need some sense of what datification involves. So starting with the idea that personal data can be considered anything from a post to a photo or geolocational information. The second thing is to critically reflect upon the importance of metrics in social media. Now, we know numerization has been around for a long time, but undoubtedly digital technology has really increased what can be numerized and how this information can then be circulated. The third thing we wanted to do is develop awareness and understanding of the political economy of digital platforms. And of course, how this is then connected to the generation and collection of personal data. So essentially to see personal data as part of a bigger kind of issue and context. Now we know that raising awareness and critical understandings is really only part of the equation. We also need to provide all users really with strategies and tactics to manage their data. Without this sense of ability to kind of do something about this newfound information, users can end up, or individuals can end up, feeling quite anxious, ambivalent, or apathetic. So we need to provide some alternatives to them. Finally, users really need to gain a sense of the short and long-term implications of datification. So not just now or even in the next month, but potentially for potentially spicy pieces of information. These can have implications that last 10 or 20 years. So giving young people or students a sense of those implications is a really important part of this sort of critical education. So the background, there were 3 projects involved in this kind of our exploration. And the first was what we call Data Smart 1, which we worked with teenagers 13 to 17 years. 27 participants were involved, and we developed an app called PDQ. But Data Smart 2 and 3 will kind of use the same app, which we call FriendSend, and involved a slightly younger cohort of students. So in the Data Smart 2, we worked with 44 participants aged 10 to 12 years. And then Data Smart 3, we were slightly younger again, so aged 8 to 10 years. And that was a slightly larger cohort, 125 participants. So we really relied on 2 main methods. The first of this was what we call code-based experimentation with digital media and data generation. And that was really about using chat apps in order to kind of work with young people as part of their world and then develop that critical understanding. So Data Smart 1 used a chat app called PDQ, and Data Smart 2 and 3 used FriendSend, and this was designed in collaboration with some of the students at one of the primary schools we worked at. So they came up with the name, the design, and they also came up with a little icon of the hands. Now both chat apps were designed so that users could send texts, image, and they could also create groups. But in order to support a critical reflection, the apps were able to aggregate personal data and then reveal to each participant through the use of Google Cloud APIs how their text, image, and geolocational data could be recirculated and reused by third parties. So accompanying the apps was a web app that then was able to show how this data could be processed. All 3 projects involved a series of workshops. So we didn't want to just drop the app into the school and then let the kids and the teachers work it out for themselves. So we developed a series of workshops that built understanding alongside using the app, and then also worked with students to come up with strategies and tactics that could help them protect and manage their data in better ways. So that was the kind of goal of this educational program, but I now really want to talk about the realities of doing this work. And although this might sound kind of relatively straightforward on the surface, what we found is that actually doing this kind of code-based experimentation in schools is actually quite difficult. So the first thing that we noticed is that materializing personal data so that young people could actually see what we're talking about was a really important part of the educational process. So the main function of the app was really to kind of reveal this back-end process, the thing that is behind the infrastructure. And the website was able to process that personal data to give the students a sense of what was entailed with personal data profiling and tracking. So this is a screenshot of the dashboard, and the web app was able to process text, image and geolocational data. So this is a screenshot of my locational data, and you can probably work out from the red dots where I live. So we could talk to the students once we had this kind of information on the dashboard about where, you know, even though you might not put your address into a website, if your geolocational settings are on, many companies can work out where you live and perhaps even where you go to school. One unanticipated aspect of the project was this tension between the collective ethos of the classroom and the kind of implicit networked individualism of social media. So, which was, I guess, present also in FriendSend and is of course present in many of the mainstream social media platforms as well. Now, while social media creates collectives and networks for communication and participation purposes, it is typically negotiated by the individual alone. So for the younger participants, there was clearly benefit in initiating what was for many their first experiences of social media. So they had the guidance of their teachers and their peers, and this brought a really nice sense of collectivity to social media use and provided quite a safe space for these participants to kind of develop their social media practices. Now, these data processing tools are not intended to be used in a kind of a small scale way and clearly have more meaning when scaled up to millions of users. Nevertheless, all three projects were able to use artificial intelligence that was born of a group and tailor it to the individual. And this was a really interesting aspect of the project for many of the students. Now, this is my son, and I do have his consent to use this photo, but what we were able to do was show them just how if they send a particular image via the app, how this image might be read or processed using the Google APIs. So, for example, we could talk to them about one of the things that the app was able to pick up was sentiment analysis. So what is the app looking for, or what's the technology looking for when it sees you smiling? So the corners of your mouth turned up might indicate joy. So we were able to have lots of really interesting kind of critical conversations with the students around this, and in a sense that enabled the participants to kind of think like a machine, to find these different points on the image that were triggering particular readings. For example, how it might have picked up that my son was eating when he's at the dining table. He's clearly not eating, but because his hand is up toward his mouth, that is what is kind of picked up. One additional dimension that we were interested in exploring in this project is what might be termed people's data imaginations. And in the basic sense, the term imagination is used here to refer to students' capacity to move beyond what they already know and to see things from others' point of view, and to extend their experience and thoughts in ways that might result in new insights, ideas, and aspirations. So we're really interested in getting them to think differently about data, but we actually found that this was really quite challenging. And I think, as Professor Shin's work shows, you almost need an entire project really to kind of develop how we can do data or how we can do technology differently, because it becomes so quickly ingrained in our everyday practices. What we found was that in particular is that the young people were caught between two competing discourses, and the cyber safety discourse, which is particularly strong in Australia, and many of the students, even by 8 to 10 years old, had been bombarded with the kind of sort of cyber safety message. But they were caught between the cyber safety discourse and what Anna Hintz and colleagues call is actively manufactured general standards and design of digital platforms, which had positioned them as users and consumers within the digital economy. And this made it very difficult for them to think and act differently when it came to personal data. So often when we would try to challenge the students to kind of come up with different ways of doing data, they often reverted back to kind of the cyber safety internet awareness sort of discourse. Now, even though it was designed as an educational chat app, FriendSend was perceived by all the participants to work as a commercial chat app. And many of the younger participants in the Data Smart 2 and 3 projects had never used a chat app before, and they were very excited about it. So it was quite difficult to move them on into these more kind of critical understandings. And this could be contrasted with our Data Smart 1, where the users were already quite using social media quite frequently. And in some senses, it was easier to develop that more critical understanding because it wasn't as exciting. So you can see on the around FriendSend, we had lots of hellos, highs, and emojis just being shared. Now, the final phase of the project was to explore possibilities for alternative practices and actions. Now, all groups was essentially interested in developing practices for greater privacy, but in reality, this proved a lot more difficult to establish kind of ideas that could be carried on in their everyday life. Indeed, the initial design work groups around this theme struggled to move beyond really exaggerated kind of forms of counter practice. So often what was mentioned was, oh, we will just stop using social media altogether, which is of course not what our intention was at all. So just to summarize, what we found the challenge, we came up with there's a whole range of challenges really to doing this work in schools. The first is the tension between critical education and cyber safety. And in many ways, these two different discourses are contrary. And this was reflected across all three of our projects, with students of different ages demonstrating a strong tendency to interpret issues associated with datification through the lens of risk and danger, with explanations and solutions involving self-responsibilization. This often made it very difficult to develop more nuanced understandings of datification, as well as tactical responses to counter data processing. Second is whether there is motivation for schools and teachers to care about one more thing as part of an already kind of quite crowded curriculum. We worked with motivated teachers who certainly had concern around profiling and privacy, but not all teachers feel the same way. So how can we encourage schools and teachers to see the importance of this issue? Third is the technological challenges of working in schools. So not only are schools often digitally compromised in one way or another, we frequently had to, internet was down or laptops weren't charged, and those kind of practical challenges really did make things difficult at times. Fourth is the ethics of using social media as part of this program. Now, while we're encouraging students to critique the data economy, and our approach was essentially implicated them in the data economy in ways that most previously had not been. So as small-scale intervention, we had little opportunity to opportunity to not use anything other than the commercially owned platforms such as Google APIs. So the developers assured us that our participants' data would not be used for other purposes. However, it's very difficult to guarantee that. Finally, while the projects had great success in raising awareness of data processing, we are well aware that changing these practices in the future is another matter entirely. So whether or not these kinds of practices are able to be translated into young people's everyday lives is not something that we can really comment on, but that is a kind of a challenge for the future. Thank you. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Well, Professor Shin and Dr. Pengpa Geo made presentations on one common theme, which is this. Well, that's really about the interest in invisible infrastructure and the interest in datafication. In the process of using social media, digital platform users are making use of it and participating in this platform, and where and how we are located in this process is actually about the citizenship, about digital citizenship education. And to help users understand this, we have to visualize invisible ones, meaning that we need a process of materializing it. And that's very important. That's what she said. And code-based experimentation was also mentioned. For example, AI-like thinking activities were very impressive. One more thing is that, well, I told the audience that you can leave the question, and I have been receiving the questions.
Now I would like to invite Professor Oh Chang-in. As mentioned, the Lucy Pancrazio, the presentation, I think really stimulated the imagination for Professor Oh. Professor Oh is teaching digital arts at Gyeongin National University of Education, and he's a world-renowned artist with over 20 years of creative and research activities in the field of media art. And we have a new major of AI education, and he's also involved in this graduate school of AI education, and he's also a member of Media Literacy Institute, and he's also a close associate of mine. Professor Chang-in Oh's representative works have been collected not only by public institutions such as the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art, but also from companies and private collectors. And as an artist, Professor Chang-in Oh has been continuously presenting works in the form of interactive art in which viewers and the works communicate in the exhibition space, and has been frequently invited to the educational exhibitions. The Gyeongin National University has two campuses, and the first campus is in Incheon. And 2 years ago, there was a gymnasium, that new exhibition space established 2 years ago. So Professor Oh's presentation will be about the space, and the digital media art exhibition that was unveiled in 2019 will be explained, and it's called Media Sensibilia. And for this exhibition, that exhibition is collected and exhibited by the Incheon Community Media Center. And media education meets with digital art and in the digital media environment, and various experiences and the artistic reflection and communication take place. And I think this presentation will be really interesting. I would like to now give the microphone to Professor Oh. So now I'll make the presentation, and my presentation will be on the gymnasium and the exhibitions in gymnasium and the experience-based exhibition that is collected and exhibited by the Incheon Community Media Center. And I would like to especially focus on the interactivity. And within the slides, I've prepared many pictures of the artworks and the video, so please enjoy. So when we talk about digital media in our everyday life and in education, it's like it has become essential. Even before we were born, that we lived and the life has existed together with media, and media will exist even after our death. And because media has to tell that the world will collapse to the people that exist before the collapse of the world. So how we use the media and how we interact with media and how we read and analyze and deliver and share the message, that is delivered through the media. So in general, the media is seen as a tool or device. But for the younger generation, the digital natives, they view media as part of their body. And since in the 1960s, the media theorist and the artist already argued back then. In the 1960s, in the field of arts, media is viewed as a tool that will replace the drawing and sculpture. The first video artist, Baek Nam-jun, the media artist, the TV and video, he used the TV and video to make the interactive art. So beyond mass media, the TV and video were turned into an individualized and artistic media art exhibition. And after this artist, the Baek Nam-jun, there was many different avant-garde artists who have expanded the genre and the scope of arts. And some graphic engineers and artists try something new. So there was the emergence of digital art. And since then, the artist had to learn the computer technology. So that was the mood back then. So the digital photo, digital drawing, digital music, digital animation, and digital film. So all the areas of art will be covered by the digital media. So in the field of arts, the digital technology will be used in a non-linear way. In the 1990s, very fastly, it has been integrated and affected all the different elements of art, and it has been turned into an interactive art. So through the interactive art, that artwork interacts with the viewers directly. So the viewers, they're not viewing and enjoying and appreciating the artwork. So with the interactive artwork and exhibitions, the viewers participate and become an experiencer of the artworks. So interactive artwork allow the viewers to touch and move along and even dance along with the exhibition. And what you're seeing is the My Artwork, and it's for the media sensibility exhibition. I enable these children viewers to have a mirror effect with this exhibition, this work. And as you can see from the video, they catch that there is a delay in the mirror effect, and they make a line like this, and they make a delay of the movements and repeat their movements to interact with this artwork. And I didn't intend for the viewers to do like that, but these children figure out and create a new kind of interaction and play while enjoying this work. Through media sensibility, that we had a first exhibition and at the Gyeongin National University of Education, and I invited the well-known media artists in Korea to deal with and to select the major work that can interact mostly with the viewers. And AI, the machine learning technologies are also used for these artworks. And within the campus, there was this exhibition space. And we also tried to expand the communication with the community in which the campus is located. So that's what we try to do through the exhibition. So artwork allow us to find the meaning through the artwork, and the viewers will not just interpret what the artist intend to deliver. They go even beyond interpreting the artwork, and they create something new, and they experience something new while watching and interacting with the artwork. So they became the performer or the doer while watching these artworks. The AI's machine learning technology is used for this artwork, and this interactive work, depending on the pose that the viewers make, it creates something new for the viewer. And what you're seeing is the scene that you can see the different roles for the viewers. The viewers, they can become the observer and the spectator, performer, participant, and they can even become an operator. So that role creates the interaction, and depending on what kind of opportunities are given, they can have a different interaction with the artwork. And as mentioned by Lisa Kervin, so the activity theory was mentioned, and Darsgaard and Quefoot analyzed the type of roles in the art exhibition. So the so-called users, they are playing the 3 different roles. And the Professor Lucy Pangraccio, they also mentioned about the building the relationship. And I think the roles for the viewers, so allow people to do the collaboration, intervention, and throughout the process of finding their roles. Unlike digital arts, conventional computer games just enforce the competitive rules and require really complicated skills to users to compete well. But art is different, somewhat different. Young children and students in front of the interactive artwork, they can sense how the interactive artwork respond to their action or behavior. They can find out and see. So this really facilitates the proactive interaction, and it will really help the viewers to better understand and appreciate the artwork. And younger generation viewers, they really take pleasure in interacting with the artworks because they want to break out from the tedious tradition in the museum where they have to just watch the artworks. And after the exhibitions, then they can also do some kind of artwork creation, the experience workshops. And it's not about just proactively watching the artworks. It gives the viewers to share what they have felt, and giving a chance to them to share the different response and different feelings that they had while watching and interacting with the artworks. And the viewers, they're wondering how artists develop their distinctive artwork. And during the exhibition, we have invited the 4 artists to the workshop, and they hosted this workshop to unveil the techniques that they use for creating these artworks. And we allowed them to exhibit their own artworks. So through the medium of the tools for creating the artworks, that artists meet with the viewers and interact with them. So this was, I think it's a really good way to learn media literacy. The best way to learn media literacy is creating your own media org. So at Gyeongin, that we provide that this kind of programs for the latest 3 years. And in 2014, in Songdo, the new town built in Gyeonggi province, the Incheon Community Media Center was established, and this is a public institution. And this media center is established in 8 different areas in Korea, and they are providing the many different programs to the residents. And in Incheon, they're creating the new contents and creating the biographic and applying the special effects and the one media, the video production. So these are the programs provided, and I've also opened the new media art class at Incheon Community Media Center. But because of the COVID-19, that the program has been put forward a little bit. So at Incheon Media Community Center, there was an experience zone on the 3rd floor for the visitors. And you can see that it's a really spacious, and the visitors can experience the many different artworks exhibited there. And first, that there is the small-sized TV studio, and there is 2 characters beloved by children. And at the radio studio, the DJ, they can try being a reporter or the DJ, or in front of the blue screen, they can use the chromography to try to become a weather forecaster there. And augmented reality and virtual reality experience is also available there. And they can use the smart pad to experience this VR. As briefly mentioned by Professor Chang, the Gyeongin artwork and the Incheon, the Community Media Center's collaboration, the P2P, link P2P. So this is the artwork mentioned by Professor Chang. So on the screen that you see the small dots are moving and creating these lines. And I first installed this at the Gyeongin National University of Education, and the user network that was seen through this artwork, has some implications for the media center. So after having the discussion, that after we had an exhibition at the Gyeongin National University of Education, that this year that we installed this at the Incheon Community Media Center. And what you're seeing on this slide is the artwork that was installed at Gyeongin. So digital artwork, it's about interacting with the residents in the community and giving them a new, fresh perspective for the digital works, and they can enjoy the joy of interacting with the artwork. And digital art, rather than just following the media's narrative structure, that is about giving them a chance to interact with the works in real time. And the artworks in general, it's about raising a philosophical questions that we can see in our everyday life. So it's working as a mechanism that allows us to think about what could be the philosophical question that we can answer through these artworks. So digital artwork is unlike our traditional the tools that it gives us a new way for the future. And what I would like to suggest is this. Young students and other institutions that nowadays they are teaching the coding to children and students. and their goal is about creating the game or like creating a simple app. But instead, rather than creating the game, how about we suggest that creating the interactive artwork for children who are learning coding? So I think we need a shift in the direction in coding teaching. So we're trying here through the collaboration between Gyeongin National University of Education and Incheon Community Media Center. And through such collaboration, I'm sure that there will be the new way created for the students in the community. Due to the time constraints, I have been really fast in making my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Professor Oh, that was a quite interesting presentation. Thank you very much. Professor Oh is the last presenter. There was a reason for that. And I wanted to show how Gyeongin National University of Education is doing in collaboration with Incheon Community Media Center. So you see the mirror effect. So he created this artwork, and you see the children playing with that artwork. So watching that video, many of you seem to be really interested in what the viewers can see and what they can be given as a new opportunities. That perspective is really meaningful in media literacy and how we will approach the media literacy. I think there was some value in artistic approach. So new VR and AR or AI technologies will be introduced and used more. And for that, this is the initial stage, and the artistic creativity and the social and the philosophical question that can be posed with that interactive artworks can, and throughout this process that we can really enrich the media literacy. And this is the end of the first session. There wasn't any technical difficulty, but thanks for your patience with us. And 5 presenters, you have kept the time given to you, so we were able to keep the time limit. It isn't easy, so I know. So thank you very much for keeping the time. And Korean time, it's now 3:55, and now we need some time to rest, so we will resume. So 4:10. So if you have a question, that you can raise a question in the Q&A, the section of the Zoom. I hope that you will be with us till the end of today's webinar. So we will resume at 4:10.